Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, whenever you are, wherever you are. I'm glad you're here, right here on Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. God loves you. He created you, and you are so worth it. As a disciple in progress, I do this show Nothing But Truth. And some people have said, well, what is Nothing But Truth? Nothing But Truth is about objective truth. It's about say absolute truth, maximize it, okay? It is recognizing that there is objective truth. And it's not going, hey, I'm Crane Durham and here's my truth. Because I'm not in a counseling session or sitting around with the guys or gals, as it were, or with my wife or anybody or my relatives, okay? This is my truth about that. Because my truth often is, and I'm talking about the general my truth, there are the air quotes, thank you, Chris Farley, but the my truth is often bended to the narrative. And so it's not objective truth, it's just a spin on the truth. And I just want to cut through that. I don't want that. So when I say something is true, then it's objectively true. And this brings me to a story from Newsbusters regarding Israel. And it's not about the hostages. I'll address that story down the line as more hostages are freed by the terrorist organization, Hamas. Don't trust Hamas. And it sounds like the president is not going to do that. And that's good news. And that's hard to find with the president. I digress, only to say this. Clay Waters writes a story. He's covering Christina Amanpour's news show. She was very big in the past, covering international news for CNN and being their chief foreign correspondent. Now she's on PBS and she's doing a news program. Well, the other night she had on this gentleman here is from the UN Relief Chief Martin Griffiths. That's his name. And what you're about to hear is Hamas propaganda. And why is it Hamas propaganda? Because it is not telling you the whole story. And we know the story when it comes to Hamas because they use civilians to protect their leaders and their military, their arms, if you will, things in their terrorist organization they use to kill other people or hide hostages, etc. So I'm going to just put this up for you, pardon, and we're going to go right now to Mr. Griffiths. He's asked about, well, you'll hear it.
Seen anything like this? Well, how do you assess what's happening right now in terms of humanitarian needs in Gaza?
The worst ever, Christiane, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, I started off in my 20s dealing with the Khmer Rouge, and you remember how bad that was, the killing fields and so forth. But 68% of the people killed in Gaza are women and children.
Hold it. Okay. The Khmer Rouge actually committed a genocide against the Cambodian people, 1.7 million. Now, what he is suggesting is that Israel's committing a genocide when they do not target civilians, that Hamas freely admits the fact that they use civilians to cover their operations and puts them as human shields. And I think we're about to hear some numbers here that are most likely not, we don't truly know, but you can attribute these deaths to Hamas, just to be clear, just so you know, just so that we have this clear. But he's not going to present it that way because he's from that wonderful, useless organization called the United Nations, and it's a very harmful organization. There are elements that do good, I get it, but we can do a lot better. I digress. Let's get back to Mr. Griffiths.
Counting the numbers of children killed after 4,500 had been counted. Nobody goes to school in Gaza. Nobody knows what their future is. Hospitals have become a place of war, not of curing. No, I don't think I've seen anything like this before. It's complete and utter carnage.
seen
Okay,
anything
hold
like this?
on, hold on. Okay, that's the end of that clip, thank heavens. But the bottom line is that I'm going to leave him up there just so you can see this. I'll stop sharing. All right. So he is stating that, oh, children don't go to school, blame Hamas. Hospitals are places of war, blame Hamas. They use human shields, they put operations and headquarters under hospitals, tunnels, etc., and within the hospital. So it sounds like we're going to blame Israel here, and to invoke the Khmer Rouge is sick. But this is how diluted the conversation is. And this is how important it is. Understand this. You're either with Hamas or you're with Israel. There's really no in between on this. You're either with the terrorists or you're with Israel. Now, I'm with Israel because Israel is the best thing in the Middle East for so many reasons. But it doesn't go out and target civilians and kill them. It doesn't commit genocide. It's responding to an attack. I can't imagine why people would look at Gaza and say, hey, you know what? That's Israel's fault. No, do a little work. Read some history, recent history even. But this is about the survival of Israel. That's what this is about. And Israel being able to do what it needs to do to survive. And to survive, they've got to eradicate Hamas. It's got to be obliterated. It's got to be done with. And even though they are the elected government of that, they elected terrorists. And it wasn't one of those elections where everybody's sitting in the town square discussing things. I get it. But the point is, we cannot have a terrorist organization in power after October 7th. And I said before October 7th, I said this for the last 20 years. It bothers me. Let Israel win the war. But this jackass standing before you, invoking the Khmer Rouge when speaking of Israel is ridiculous. It's absurd and it's shameful. But the UN, pretty shameful. So we can talk about that later, but let's get to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter is this. The war that we are in is also an information war. I think we are in a war for the free world. And the reason I say that is defense of the free world and the United States being the leader of the free world and our president being the leader of the free world, as it's called. And so that's important. And it's because when we look at our country, however messed up it is, freedom for the individual to live their life with their own conscience, in the sense of having the freedom of speech, having the protections, ordered liberty. When we have that, it's a good thing. It's a great thing. And authoritarian, despotic countries, theocracies, autocracies, whatever it may be, they don't get along nice with others because they can't, because their country is based on a fear objective, and inevitably they got to find an outsider to blame all their problems on and to demonize them, to shift the discussion from, hey, this is a really messed up system, we need to change it. And to do that, we may have to have a revolution. And we want to be free, because I believe man wants to be free. I believe that's how we're created. I believe in inalienable rights, rights that are from God and not to take away. So in believing that, and believing that we all can live up to the declaration, that promissory note that Martin Luther King spoke to, I believe that we are the good guys. Put it simply, I believe Israel and its defense are the good guys. And I want you to know that the only reason we are having a discussion about this is because there's a lot of people supporting bad guys. And you got to ask yourself, why? Well, it's in part with the intellectualization of very basic happenings and realities. There's good and evil. The terrorist organization, Hamas, that wants to rid the world of Israel, they can't even tolerate the existence. They're the bad guys. And whether it's our education system funded by others teaching this crap, or other things like this joker going before everybody and saying, hey, you know what, that Israel's like the Khmer Rouge. I have never seen anything like this in Gaza. And it boggles my mind. So much so that I have so many things boggling my mind. I want to do this every ripping day. And I want to talk to you. I digress to only wrap this up with a discussion on our place in the world and if we're going to do things about it. Are we going to do things about evil? And I got a quote from George W. Bush, and he was before a group of folks, an organization, and he was being interviewed. And this is about, I think, over a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. And here is George W. Bush responding to the discussion about the place in the world when it relates to the Ukraine, and talking about why it's important for the United States to support the Ukraine. And yes, I am connecting the dots here. I am saying that the Ukraine matters and the situation in Israel matters, and we have a duty and an obligation to do what we can in a way that is going to defeat their enemies, because they're the enemies of the free world. How we do that, to what degree, I'm not talking about troops. I'm talking about supporting, and we'll have loads of time to discuss that. I want to focus in right now on one George W. Bush, former President George W. Bush, speaking to the issue of America's role in the world as it relates to the Ukraine and why we need to support Zelensky and their fight against psychopathic killer and war criminal Vladimir Putin.
It's the question that confronts every administration and every Congress on a regular basis. Do we care about the human condition elsewhere? On 9/11, we learned that the human condition elsewhere can jeopardize the security of the United States. And therefore, the isolationist tendencies have got huge national security implications at home. Secondly, people need to read history and remember, like, Sudetenland and the failure to stand up to the bully. And now's the time to stand up to the bully.
It could be as simple as that. Oh, George W. Bush, he wasn't that smart. That's just total BS. One, he was a voracious reader. He understood the war that we were fighting. And he was the right man at the right time in an awful time after 9/11. And as a wartime president, he did the right thing. And he won the fronts on Iraq and Afghanistan. Of course, we have revisionist history and a whole host of things, but President Obama's weakness opened up all that again. And I can go into detail about it. Here's the point the president's making when it comes to the Ukraine. They were invaded. It was not a justified invasion like there could be. It wasn't a minor incursion. Even if it was, they should repel it. They had already lost land in the previous administration under President Obama, and they're fighting for their lives, and war crimes are taking place. And the vast majority of war crimes are by the Russians. And so we can always have bad behavior in war, but on the Ukrainian side, it's the exception, not the rule. And on the Russian side, it's the rule. And so this is why we've got to step up, because Taiwan and China specifically is watching, and they're seeing, well, how we treat our allies and what we're willing to do. Now, 5% of our budget to degrade a major enemy I think is a great investment in a man who has really led that country, who is, I guess, what his critics call him, a Jewish Nazi, which is hard to do. I think they did the same thing with Jonah Goldberg. I'm like, Jewish Nazis, where are they? How does that happen? Aaron Free, is he a Jewish Nazi? I mean, it's absurd. And that's why I'm having this program. That's why Nothing But Truth is what Nothing But Truth is to clarify, to give you an honest look at it. You could have a view that opposes aid to the Ukraine. I get it. You can do that. I'm saying there are consequences. They cheered Chamberlain in 38. They cheered him. Peace in our time. Believe a piece of paper that was signed by the Nazis. And that's what he's referencing. And today we look at that, and rightfully so, as ridiculous, yet we kind of are applying the same kind of logic with a guy who has talked about reconstituting the former Soviet Union and has gone out of his way to murder people consistently. So I look at this as an investment into our ally, our standing by what we said we do in the Budapest Memorandum when they got rid of their nukes, talking about the Ukraine. And I think it's absolutely necessary. What about Ukraine's corruption? I get it. I don't want a blank check. There's no blank check going. People are watching the money. They're on it. But we're sending the signal that we're not going to support the Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. And that signal is being heard by both China and Vladimir Putin. It's also being heard by the Israelis and any other ally in the world. So we need to robustly defend what we believe in and our place in the world. And as President Bush comments.
And so, you know, I hear it all too, and you're going to hear more and more from Congress. People are going to say, you know, my bridge is, falling down. Forget Zelensky. Just so you know, if the United States turns our back on Zelensky, the whole world will. And we got to hang in there. And I applaud the Biden administration for doing so. And I admire the man. I told him, I said, you're the Winston Churchill of the modern era. Mm. And he is. He's wheeling a country through facing a bully. And, and the question is, can the bully leave office at some point? And the answer is when Ukraine wins.
Hear, hear.
Just because Biden supports something doesn't mean it's wrong. You got to make the decision on the merits of the case. Now, President Biden should be doing a lot more for the Ukrainians in the way of getting them their requests immediately, if possible. And that way they can prosecute the war that they are capable of fighting and win it. The way to end war is to win the war. And only time you're going to do that is when the evil entity that you're fighting believes that they are facing an existential threat and there's no way they're going to win. And even then, it may take more persuasion. And I don't say that lightly. So here's what we did tonight. We took two clips or a couple sections of video. One story by newsbusters.org by Clay Waters, and looked at the mainstream media acting as a propaganda arm for Hamas and examining the charge of Israel being accused of what they're doing in Gaza as genocide. And it's just not true. And we gave you the truth. And then we took that idea of good versus evil and understanding what we're in and recognizing that it's really not a tough decision what side you're on. You're either on Israel's side or you're on Hamas's side. And October 7th, you can start there. You ask, why do people believe, or why are they advocating for Hamas? Why are they advocating? And some don't know what they're saying. They don't know what they're talking about, river to the sea. Nevertheless, they're chanting it, and they've been educated in that and soaked in that brine, and it's terrible. So here's an opportunity with Nothing But Truth to give you the rest of the story and to keep your eye on the ball. Ukraine needs funding. I encourage our government, our Congress, our Speaker of the House to address that and give them that funding so we don't send the signal to the rest of the world that we are thinking about bailing on the Ukraine. And you say, what about affording it? Yeah, we can afford national security. We can absolutely afford national security because that's the chief job of our government, is to protect us. And so with that, be aware of the BS, the bunny stew, be aware of this stuff because it's not going away. And if we don't address it, sooner or later, we will be forced to address it. These problems don't go away. Whether it's a bully in the Middle East or a bully in Russia, we will at some point have to address these things. Do you want our enemies to be stronger? Do you want our alliances to be weaker? I don't think you do either. Well, I don't think you do. I think that you're informed on these issues. You go to the right decision. You don't want to be part of the camp that allows the enemy to grow stronger and stronger and our alliances to grow weaker and weaker, and fundamentally understands our place in the world. And our government's responsibility is first to protect its citizens. So national security is a non-negotiable. With that said, strive to live with honor in your life, compassion in your heart, and always keep the faith. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Let me know what you think. Thank you.